All right, so we are still continuing with multiplying and dividing and multi-step inequalities. We did not talk about multi-step yet. So that's where we're headed next, as well as working on some real world situations. So multi-step. Let's see. You might have something like this. Number 1. 2 parentheses x plus 2 minus 3x greater than or equal to -1. Now, again, a multi-step inequality is really no different than a regular equation. You just need to remember, if you multiply or divide by a negative number in the end, you have to flip the sign. That's the biggest difference. So, according to this, it looks like we have some distributive property that we need to take care of. So we have 2 times x, which is 2x, and 2 times 2, which is 4. And then I'm going to copy everything else over. Next, from there, we're going to combine like terms. So you have a 2x and a minus 3x, because they're all on the one side, so we're going to combine those. That would be -1x plus 4, or just -x is greater than or equal to -1. Now we have to isolate the variable, so get the variable by itself. So that gives you -1x is greater than or equal to -5. And now you're going to divide both sides by -1. Whoop, 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 whoop. You're dividing by -1, so don't forget you need to flip. And x is flip. Well, duh, Mrs. Smith, flip it. There you go. Less than or equal to 5. So there you have it. Of course, you could graph that if you wanted to. I'm pretty satisfied with your graphing abilities, so we'll just continue on. Let's see another problem. 4p plus 2 parentheses p plus 7 is less than 8. So again, I have a distributive property that I need to take care of first, and that's right here. So I go ahead and do 2 times p, which is 2p, and 2 times 7, which is 14, which is less than 8, and then carry my 4p down. Now I need to collect some like terms, so put these like terms together. 4p plus 2p is 6p plus 14 is less than 8. Subtract 14 to both sides, and to isolate the variable. So 6p is less than, 8 minus 14 would be a -6. Divide by 6 and divide by 6, and p, do we flip this time? Nope, because this is not negative, so I just leave it alone, and -6 divided by 6 is a -1. And even though this is a -1 down here, it's only if you multiply or divide by a negative number. Okay, here we go. Number 3. -3 parentheses 4 minus m is greater than or equal to 2 parentheses 4m minus 14. Can I squeeze it all in? I can't. Whew, that was a tight one. All right, so let's see. It looks like we have some distributive properties. It looks like we have 2. We have 1 here and 1 here. Pretty much everything on both sides of the equation. So -3 times 4 is -12. -3 times -m, be careful with the signs, would be plus 3m, is greater than or equal to 2 times 4m is 8m, and 2 times -14 is -28. So now this happens to be variables on both sides. Again, solve just the same. So I'm going to subtract, let's see, I'm going to make this my variable side, and I'm going to make this my constant side. So I'm going to subtract 3m to the other side to put my m's together, my variables together. So those cancel, leaving -12 is greater than or equal to 5m minus 28. Add 28 to both sides, because now you're going to isolate the variable. So that gives you -12 plus 28, which would be 16, is greater than or equal to 5m. And again, remember, if you want to stop the video because I'm going too fast and you need to catch up, or you want to do the problem on your own, that's a great idea, and then pick up where I left off. That's what the beauty of these videos are, is you can kind of go at your own pace. So 16 divided by 5 is 3.2. You could also say 3 1/5 if you leave it as a mixed number. Personally, I would take either of these, this one or this one. Both of them are fine. Okay. All right, so now multi-step equations. I think you kind of get the idea. Don't forget to flip if you multiply or divide by a negative. So let's talk about some real world situations. So write and solve the inequality. And of course, like I said before, there are kind of three parts. So A, write the inequality, B, solve it, and C, describe. So very important to have that describe step. So here we go. Number 1, the Science Club charges $4.50 per car at their car wash. Write and solve an inequality to find how many cars they have to wash to earn at least $300. So I always underline, and it usually gives me my variable. What it does, it says how many cars. So car is my X, so my variable. So $4.50 per means multiplication, and there's my car. So $4.50 times X at their car wash, and they want to earn at least $300. So earn at least $300. So here we go. I'm going to write my inequality. So they charge $4.50 per car, so times X, and then they want to make at least $300. So you have to ask yourself, at least $300. Does that mean they want to make $250? Nope, they want to make at least $300. So this side over here has got to be bigger. I'm going to highlight it in here again. So this side has to be, well, I think I'm going to highlight it. Why is that not working? That side has to be bigger than 300. So when I go to put in my sign, this side has to be bigger. So that means my inequality symbol would go like that. That side's got to be bigger. And it says at least 300. Would they be okay with making exactly 300? And of course, to the words at least, those clue words, it would mean it would include it. So there's my A. B, to solve it. So I'm going to divide both sides by 450. Divide both sides by 450. And again, you can use a calculator at any time in my class. So X is greater than or equal to 300 divided by 450. When you calculated it in your calculator, that is 66.6 repeating. Now remember, it ends in a 7 if you did it on your calculator, but remember, that's just your calculator having that, that program in there that it rounds that last digit up. So now we have to ask ourselves, so here's my B. I've actually solved it. So now C, so maybe I go like this. Here's my A. Here's my B. So now to solve it, I have to, or describe it exactly, I have to keep in mind, are they going to wash 0.6 repeating or 2/3 of a car? No. And they want to make at least $300. So obviously I have to go between 66 and 67. If they wash 66 cars, they won't make their $300 goal. So we want to make this into 67 cars. So they need to wash. And you can't just say 67 cars because that's not what we're doing. We're talking about 67 or more. And you could say it right like that. They need to wash 67 or more cars. And you could add to reach their goal. Or you could say at least 67 cars. That would work too. All right, number 2. The student council votes to buy food for a local food bank. A case of 12 jars of spaghetti costs $3.75. What is the greatest number of cases? Right there's my question. Greatest number of cases. So number of cases is my variable, my X, of sauce the student council can buy if they have at most, or if they use at most, $216 for this project. So it says that I'm going to write my inequality, but a case of 12 jars of spaghetti costs $13.75. So they're wanting to know the number of cases. So a case costs $13.75. Do I need to know, at least for my problem, that a case has 12 jars of spaghetti? Nope, I don't. Great information, but it's extra. It's a distractor, and so I'm just going to cross it off, okay? I just need to know they're $13.75 per case. So I'm going to take $13.75 and multiply it by X because we need to know how many cases. And they want to spend at most $216. So if it's at most, that means this side over here, I'm not going to highlight it this time, but this side, can it be bigger than 216? And it cannot, according to the language, at most. So it's got to be less than. Could it be exactly 216? They want to use at most 216. It certainly could. It could be equal to. So there is my inequality. So next, I'm going to divide both sides by 1375 to solve. Divide by 1375 to solve. And so that gives me x is less than or equal to 216 divided by 1375. Again, use a calculator. And it's like 15.709 with 09 repeating. So now I have to interpret that remainder a little bit. So they're not going to buy a 0.709 repeating case of spaghetti. That would be crazy. It would be a partial case, and then within the partial case, it'd be a partial jar. They're not going to do that. So can they buy 15 cases or 16 cases? If I round this up to 16, would they have enough money? No. They only want to spend 216. If I go up to 16, this is where it exactly equals 216. So if I go up to 16, that would be too much. So this is actually, they're going to stay at 15. So this would be B. And then C would be, they can buy at most 15 cases. Or you could say they can buy up to 15 cases. That would be another way to say it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to skip around a little bit. Let's do number 4. So it says, on a trip from Virginia to Florida, the Sampson family wanted to travel at least 420 miles in 8 hours of driving. What must be their average rate of speed? So must be their average rate of speed. So averages are x. And then, of course, you need to remember that this is that distance formula that came from chapter 1. So distance equals rate multiplied by time. So on a trip from Virginia to Florida, the Sampson family wants to travel at least 420 miles in 8 hours of driving. So that's the time, 8 hours. So rate, average rate, that's my x. So 8, and then you're going to multiply by your rate. So your rate is what we don't know, average rate. So that's our x. Time was 8, and the distance was 420. But of course, you know it's got to be an inequality. We cannot write an equal to. So it would be 8x, and you've got 420. Now let's go back to this clue word, at least 420. So that sounds like, do they want to drive 350 miles? Nope. It says at least 420 in an 8 hour period. So that means this side here, remember I always have to think about it where the variable is, has to be greater than 420. Would it be equal to at least 420? Yep, it would be according to that. All right, so now I'm going to divide by 8 to solve. So that gives me x is greater than or equal to 420 divided by 8 would be 52.5 if you use your calculator. Whoops, sorry about that. And do I have to interpret? This is like an average speed. Could you drive an average speed of 52.5 miles per hour? You could. So we don't have to do any interpretation here. There's my B. And C would be they need to travel. Now, this says x is bigger. So this is where it is equal to. That's this part. Now I need to talk about this x being bigger. So they need to travel at least 52.5 miles per hour to reach their goal. Okay. Next two we're not going to actually solve because I think you're pretty good with solving. Let's just do the setup. So it says the perimeter of an isosceles triangle is at most 27 centimeters. The base is 8 centimeters long. Find the possible lengths of the two congruent sides. So when we talk about lengths, that's our x. What can you tell me about an isosceles triangle? Do you remember? Hopefully you're saying out loud to the screen. Isosceles triangle means there are two equal sides, because that is exactly what it is. So I'm going to draw myself a triangle. And an isosceles triangle would mean these two are equal. Okay, notice I put like a little line through it. That's how you show equals like in geometry. That means this side here is equal to that side there, okay? And then it sounds like we have the base. So it says the base is 8 centimeters long. They said the perimeter is at most 27 centimeters. So that means perimeter is the distance around. It's at most 27. We didn't know the possible lengths of the two congruent sides, so that's my x. And of course, they're equal because that's what those little tick marks mean. So the other side has to be x too. So if I'm going to write my inequality, I'm dealing with perimeter, which means you just add up all the sides. So you could say x plus 8, and I have 27. It says the perimeter is at most 27. So again, I think this side where I have the variables, can it be bigger than 27? At most 27, so nope. Could it be equal to? It could, okay? Or, of course, you could do some simplifying. X plus x is 2x plus 8 is less than or equal to 27. And then, of course, you could solve and describe it. All right, last but not least, number 6. The 8th grade class is planning a picnic. The cost of a permit to use Abernathy Park is $250. To pay for the permit, there is a fee of 75 cents for each 8th grader and $1.25 for each guest who is not in 8th grade. 200 8th graders plan to attend. Write and solve an inequality to find how many guests, there's my question, guest is my x, must attend for the 8th graders to pay for the permit. So the permit is $250. They charge 75 cents for each 8th grader and $1.25 for each guest. They tell us that 200 8th graders attend. So 8th graders, there are 200 of them going. So what would my inequality look like? Well, 75 cents times the 200 people would be the one part. That's for the 8th graders. And then we have the rest. How much do the rest get charged? They get charged $1.25, and those are guests, and we don't know how many are coming, so that's our x. We're going to multiply it by. Okay, and then they have to pay for the permit of $250. Now, again, you ask yourself, this side where the variable is at, is it going to be bigger than 250 or less than 250? Well, they want to make at least 250 to cover their costs. So that means this side has to be greater than. Could it be equal to? Yep, they want to make at least 250, so equal to. And there's the setup. You, of course, could then solve. All right, so inequalities with multi-steps, there they are, and inequalities with some real-world situations. All right, get going.